Hi and welcome to the podcast. You're having tea with Alice. Welcome to season 3 of Tea with Alice. Your first episode's guest is Avril Speaks, who is a filmmaker and storyteller and general creative person, as well as being an amateur drummer. We spoke online on Zoom. If you want to watch us do the conversation, I put a lot of these up on YouTube now. So if you look up Alice Fraser on YouTube and look up Tea with Alice on YouTube, you'll find a bunch of the episodes, and I'm going to be trying to put most of them up from now on in. Anyway, I spoke with Avril about names, creator economies, and whether we should love the art for the art's sake or whether we should be trying to make money. We spoke about high and low culture, and obviously I chatted a little bit about coming back from having a baby into the world of the creator economy. Speaking of the creator economy, if you want to support this podcast, patreon.com/Alice Fraser is the place to do that. I do twice weekly writers' meetings and salons, weekly salons as well, which is where we all get together in a room and we have a little bit of a chat about ideas. It's sort of like a Tea with Alice episode, but in a group. If that's interesting to you, or if you just want to support what I do, patreon.com/Alice Fraser. I don't normally plug it this hard, but I now have a second baby. So that's all from me. I'll stop rambling and let you get on with listening to this conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed having it. I'll talk to you again next week. Hi and welcome to the podcast. You're having tea with Alice. Who are you and what are you drinking?
I'll answer the second question first. I'm drinking lavender lemon drop tea.
That sounds amazing. I mean, you have what sounds like an American accent. So the idea of an American knowing how to drink tea properly is quite exciting.
I don't know. I don't know if I am drinking it. Am I drinking it properly?
I don't know. All I know is I lived in New York for a year, and the first couple of times I asked for tea were enough. Like, I learned that it wasn't just one shop where they would bring out like warm water and a tea bag, just like, which is basically like saying fuck you for asking for tea. Essentially, it's a direct insult.
So I'm assuming like it should have cream or something like that, or some milk, or what? Like what is honey?
It's more that you should take the tea bag, or if it's a tea bag. I mean, ideally, if you're in like a reputable establishment, you should be having loose leaf tea. But fine, tea bag. You put it in the vessel, and then you pour the boiling water on top of the tea immediately. You don't be like, here's some warm water and tea, and like swill them together.
I see what you're saying. You're saying.
You know, if it's like a special Japanese tea, you might want like 80-degree water or like 70-degree water, like something less warm. But you want to be specific about the temperature at which you're combining the elements.
I get what you're saying. Well, then I guess I am, because I have it's loose leaf tea. Here's my little.
Hey, you've got a device.
Yes.
You're with it. There, I've been insulting your entire nation, and here you are, doing it all, like, magnificently.
No, but I get it, though. So I can't drink coffee. So coffee gives me, like, a really bad reaction. So I've become kind of like a tea connoisseur. So I totally understand what you're saying, because I've been to restaurants before that give me a cup of hot water and a tea bag. And usually when they give you a tea bag, I just kind of know that this is not going to be an enjoyable tea experience, especially because, like, again, because I can't drink coffee, there's like flavors of tea. Like, there's all different kinds of tea, and then there's herbal tea, and there's black tea, and like there's so many different kinds of tea that I'm like, whenever I'm not asked or given an option of like, what kind of tea would I like, and I'm just given a tea bag, just like arbitrarily given a tea bag, I have lots of questions.
I know too, and it's not just the US that does that. Occasionally, you'll get that in Australia or even in the UK. So I don't want to like traduce your countrymen, but it's fucking gross, man. I also don't drink coffee, which is one of the reasons why I like tea so much. So please tell my audience who you are at the moment. at
Who
least?
am I at the moment? At the moment, I am Avril Speaks. I am a producer, director, writer, showrunner. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a storyteller at the heart of it all. I'm a person who tells stories, loves stories, have been telling stories since I was a kid. And now I get to tell stories for a living, all kinds of stories for a living. I think at the end of the day, that's really who I am. And I would say if I were to draw that circle a little wider, um, I'd say I'm an artist. Like I'm just a creative person. I make films. I play the drums on the side. It's become like a new hobby of mine that like I love so much and it's so rewarding and enjoyable. So I just love all things art and I like creating things and that's who I am and what I do.
That's so interesting. You introduced yourself as Avril Speaks, which is to say that's your creator name, your screen name, your online name.
No, that's actually my given name on my birth certificate.
Really? That's
Yeah.
so cool. I have just gone through the process of naming a child, and that's a that's a great name.
Thank you. I mean, it's taken me many years to appreciate it, to lean into the name. Because I'm sure kids can be cruel and I didn't always have, favorable reactions to my name. So I kind of grew up hating my name. And then
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. It was just, I grew up, I was really quiet as a kid. And they would always be like, Avril speaks. Well, speak to us. Speak to us, Avril. What does she say? What does she say? Like that. And I just didn't take to that too well. It was kind of like,
Yeah.
leave me alone.
Did you ever, as a young person, think about changing your name then, or giving a different name?
I never thought about changing my last name, but I did think about changing my first name. I also didn't really like my first name because it just felt like a odd name. Like it's like now I always kind of just like when people say my name incorrectly, like people often like I meet people that say, "Oh, Avril," like the
Like Avril
singer.
Lavigne, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, "No, it's nothing like the singer. I had this name before Avril Lavigne was even thought about." But back in the day, people wouldn't pronounce it Avril, but they would pronounce it something else. Like, I had somebody call me Advil once, and I'm like, there's in my name. Like, how do you even get Advil out of that? Um, but for me, it was just always just like it just felt uncool. I had like my friends and stuff, I felt like they had cooler names, like, you know, Zandria. I have a good friend whose name is Zandria. And like I just always felt like it was such a cool name. And Averill, it was just like two syllables, very simple,
See,
simple
my
pronunciation.
assumption was that this was your screed name, that you had like some anonymity or that you had a stage name that then kind of became your online name and you sort of identified more with that than with your given name. Because it's, to me, a super cool name. From my perspective, I'm like, what a
Yeah,
cool name. That can't be
yeah.
something that someone was given by a parent. That has to be something that somebody was chosen. So I agree with your name givers that it's a cool name.
I, I have to give it to my mom. So my mother, she tells me the story that um I believe the story goes that she was initially going to name me April. And when I was born, she just told the nurse to take out the P and put in a V. I'm like, we really could come up with a better story. Like, but it's okay. It's okay. And honestly, my mom, I know my mom took French, and Avril is French for April, only they, pronounce it Avril. And so I wonder if that was like in the back of her head that like, oh, this is another way. Like instead of saying April, let's be different and, you know, put it put a V instead of a P. So
Yeah.
like her description of it is like very, very simple. Like, oh, I just decided to change the P to a V.
I imagine in that process there was more going on than just switch out the P for a V.
I'm
Um,
sure. I'm sure there was.
because it's so fraught. Like it's so all of this like naming and the baby, and now also gender things. The other day I went to the Apple store, and I have one boy and one girl so far. They might change their minds later,
Yeah.
but I'm not bringing my children up gender anything. I'm not being
Yeah.
particularly gendered about how I do it. I have a twin brother,
Yeah.
and so for me, it was always like we would share each other's toys and swap clothes, and it was never a thing.
Mm.
But nor am I sort of deliberately trying to be gender neutral with my kids because I feel like it's a lot. That's a very high energy thing to do, and I'm
Yeah.
busy. Basically, I'm not of the battles that I will pour energy into fighting. I feel like there are other people who are more passionate about this one. For me, gender has never been a thing. It's never been particularly important, and where it has been, I've been able to kind of kick back against it as a comedian, being like, "No, women aren't funny." I'm like, "Fuck you." And equally,
Right.
when I was watching comedy and deciding I wanted to do that, I would watch Monty Python, and I never thought I can't be them because
Hmm.
they're boys and I'm not. That never occurred to me. So it's never been a battle that I have fought.
Mm.
But I was in the shop the other day with my baby strapped to me, and a young person came up to me and was like, "Oh, your baby's cute. How old are they?" And I was like, "Oh, he's whatever it was, 4 weeks old." And I realized by the reaction of the shopkeeper that I had suddenly positioned myself in opposition. And I was like, "Oh
Mm.
no, no, I didn't mean." I didn't mean to assume that my
Mm.
baby was a boy. Like I did. All of a sudden, I realized that by saying he's 4 weeks
Mm.
old, which I had done completely thoughtlessly, because everything you
Yeah.
do in the first 4 weeks of your baby's life doesn't involve a lot of brain power because you're exhausted. All of a sudden, this shopkeeper thought that I had been contradicting them and their attempt at being compassionate and caring and open and not assuming my baby's gender had all of a
Yeah.
sudden sort of become a battleground, which in my head it hadn't been. Anyway,
Right.
that's just me. That's just me
Yeah.
rambling because for me, it wasn't a thing. I'm just
Yeah.
assuming that my baby's a he because so far that's all
Yeah.
I know. I have
Well,
to
it's
go
like you
on.
were saying, like in that moment, you weren't thinking about that, but there's like more to that response and more to that story. Do you know what I mean? Especially after and reflecting on it. You know what I mean? And like, even in terms of my name, I'm sure if we could go back to that moment and like just reflect on like what was going through my mom's head, it's probably more than just, I don't
Yeah,
know,
feel. I think with
something
names,
negative.
it's sort of that you feel them out in your mouth, how they thing, and then you're looking at the baby, and they're just a tiny little blob, but you see little echoes of genetic reflection back at you, and you're like, oh, they look a bit like my brother, or a bit like my dad, or a bit like my mum, and then like, oh, you're kind of thinking about that, and then you're vaguely feeling like the schoolyard maybe of like, what if it, I have a friend who has managed to go through life with the name Neil Downward. And apparently that didn't occur to his parents as a problem. Uh, so yeah, your brain is kind of going through all of these things, but
Yeah.
you've come to like your name. You've come to
I've
feel
come to
happy
like
with
my
it.
name. I've come to like my name. I'll keep it. I'll fight for it. I like my name now. So, like I said, it's taken me many years to get to that point, but I'm very appreciative of my name. So my middle name is Zalima, and I always thought that my dad came up with my middle name, and I always thought that my middle name was cooler than my first name. So there was a period where I wanted to change my name to Zalima. So it'd be Zalima
Ah,
Speaks. I think maybe briefly I thought maybe Avril Zalima and just keep it like that and get rid of the speaks altogether, hence the earlier part of our conversation. But that just didn't roll off too well. And then so I thought, well, Zalima speaks. And then I don't know, it just that movement that movement was short-lived. It just died out. Older I got.
Yeah, names are such a funny thing because in some ways they're not that important. Because with the people you really love, you rarely call them by your name, by their names. You
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
the people who are like in your life on a day-to-day basis, you'll call them like dumpling or potato or whatever, sweetheart, or they're not so defined by their name. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about today, this morning. What have you been wrestling with recently?
I guess it's the age old, like as an artist, it's like the age old divide between art and commerce. And, it's like corporations and capitalism. Like, it's just this question, is it really possible to tether ourselves to like cut the cord from capitalism and like corporate greed or like corporate takeover? Like, how can we tether ourselves from, or not tether ourselves to that? Is it really possible to do? And I guess, I've been thinking about that a lot lately as someone who creates things for a living, but then also as someone who consumes them, as an audience, a person in the audience, um, and like what I'm watching and how I'm watching things, how I'm consuming any type of media, whether it's film, television, radio, podcasts, you know, um, yeah. I've just been thinking about that because I have all these conversations with people who are just like, we need a new system. And like in film, it's really interesting in film because it's like, screw the system. Oh, I have this deal at Netflix. And I'm guilty of it myself. You know what I mean? I'm guilty of it myself. Because I work in that space. You know what I mean? Like I've done projects in that space and like it's just a very hard balance to make.
Yeah, it really really fucking is. I'm thinking about this as well, obviously, for so many reasons. My most recent show, Twist, is about the fact that I'm not really doing stand up anymore, at least for the next while, because the economics don't work out with two children. Touring with two children doesn't work, particularly once now my daughter is 2. You have to pay for plane tickets. That changes the equation, the maths of the thing. And for so many years, and it's also recast the work that I've been doing in stand-up for so many years, because for so many years I was doing gigs where really it wasn't worth it. If you added up the, like the travel and the accommodation and you're like, oh, well, I'll just sleep in the bus stop till the night bus comes because that's the only way I can make a profit. All of those deals that are sort of okay to do when you're a young person, less okay when you're a young woman.
Yeah, yeah.
And then impossible to do when you have children. And you
Right.
have to factor in childcare or staying in a decent place or whatever it happens to be. So that I've been thinking about from one perspective. And then part of what feeds into that is the idea that as artists, because we love what we do, we should be better than money. We should be better than needing money. We should be above it. If we're real artists, we should be willing to do it for free. We should be willing, we get something out of it, and therefore to demand money from it is somehow dirty or degraded. And that comes in parallel with this narrative of the more popular something is, the worse it is somehow. And I'm writing a book at the moment that's sort of set in the world of romance novels. And, the reality of the economics of that is that romance novels prop up the rest of the industry. Financially speaking, the only reason you're allowed to publish fancy literary books that don't sell,
Yes.
the only reason that you can publish these books is because romance novels are selling at, people are buying 4 a week and reading them in 2 hours on the train and getting great pleasure out of them. But that's not
Yeah.
real art.
Right.
So all of that is kind of in my head, and sort of the idea as well, things like stand-up are not considered real art because they have to work for the audience in some way. I don't know. It's all in jumbling around in my head, as well as like, how do I make money now if I'm not doing stand-up?
Yeah. It's so weird. As a producer, I hear people talk, I meet with filmmakers sometimes and I hear people just say like, I want to do this film and I don't want it to be, they'll name a certain like platform or like, I don't want it to be like this. Like, I don't want it to be like Lifetime. I don't want it to be this. And it's like, you know how many viewers Lifetime has? A lot of people watch Lifetime. Like, that's not a bad thing to have a Lifetime movie. There's these ideas of like, somebody should be on this platform versus that platform. Like, to your point about romance novels, for example, it's like, I feel like sometimes people make these value judgments about like, it's kind of like back in the day when people would be like, oh yeah, my movie's going straight to DVD, and say that as if it's like it's not good enough because it didn't play in a theater. And of course, like the whole system has changed now. Like DVDs aren't even a thing anymore.
But it is, yeah, this idea of gatekeepers and sort of who you're associated with being the mark of legitimacy or illegitimacy. And I don't know, I get to the point now where I'm just so impressed if anyone gets anything done. Like, just doing a thing is so hard, particularly something that has moving parts like television or even books, where it's just, it's not just sitting in front of a TikTok and doing that. It's more. I don't know. I feel like I just give you so many props for that.
It's interesting. Like you asked, like, what am I wrestling with? I think career-wise, where I am right now is I've started sort of changing the litmus test, if you will, of, when it comes to like projects that I take on or projects that I'm interested in and want to be part of. The litmus test is, would my dad like it? My dad lives in Atlanta, Georgia. He's retired. My dad will sit in front of his computer all day or on his phone. He scrolls on his phone practically all day. But he also watches television, and my dad, I've always known my dad to be this way. Like, my dad watches a little bit of everything. But whenever I go to his house in Georgia, he can be watching a little bit of everything, but like, my dad just likes to be entertained. My dad just likes to laugh. My dad loves like controversial stuff. Like, anytime there's like, people have those like tell-all books. My dad is always the first one on the scene. Like, he's the first one to like read a tell-all book. Especially if it's political. Like, he's just like all about it. Like, he wants to know all the tea on everything. But like, even in terms of television and film, like, he's just, I don't know, he just has a certain taste. And so I go, there's some films that are like, they're just so out there. And those are films that I love, like the films that, like those indie darling films that like play at Sundance and, win the jury prize, and that you just like intellectual and leaves you with questions, and it's all about having conversations. Like, those are the films I love. My dad's like, he just wants to be entertained. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are like that, who just want to watch something and be entertained. There's some people that just don't want to do that much thinking when watching television,
Yes. Which is not a mark necessarily of a bad person. You're just
Exactly.
tired at the end of the day,
Tired.
You've got your job and you've got your family and you're thinking all day, and maybe you don't want to be challenged with your art. Maybe you don't want to be lying down after something thinking what the meaning of existence is.
Exactly. There's a lot going on in the world right now. I feel like, the past, I'll say the past 2, 3 years, it's just been a lot, and I've found myself taking solace in like, people ask like, what do you do to relax? Like relaxing to me is like laying on the couch and doing nothing or like watching television. And oftentimes it's mindless TV. It's TV that I don't have to think about. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to watch something that I have to like think about and ask questions. I don't want to think about anything. I want to watch House Hunters. I want to watch Love It or List It. Like that has become my obsession, has become HGTV. I can watch all day long. I can watch House Hunters, because there's House Hunters and then there's House Hunters International.
I did not know that.
Like that's a whole different thing. I can watch Love It or List It. There's another show called Million Dollar. No, I just won the lottery or something. Like Find Me My $1 Million Home. Or like I can watch these shows all day because I don't have to think. I'm just like, I can just watch other people spend money and buy a house or watch this, person from whatever American town go to some other country. It's so weird. Like they always go to another country and they're making demands and they're just like, why doesn't this have a double oven? And you're just like, get down. Like nobody has that. Like, nobody has that period. Like, let alone wherever you are. Like,
Some small Portuguese village in the
yeah,
middle of
yeah,
nowhere.
exactly. Exactly. Like, anyways, that has become just such a respite for me, has been like sitting on the couch. If I'm not doing something else like reading or, doing something else with my spare time or, like media wise, I'll just watch television that I don't have to think about.
Well, also, if you're a creator, anything good feels like work because you're like, if it's good, you're going, and I'm using in the
Yeah,
wrong way here, because good is
yeah,
obviously what you need in the moment, entertainment wise. If it's entertaining you, it's
right,
good,
right.
even if it's bad. But if it's, if it's difficult or interesting or engaging or deep or layered, you're going, how did they do that? Would I do it
Yeah.
that way? Would I do it a different way? What are the techniques they're using? I wonder how they got this made. I wonder who they sold this to. I wonder who they pitched this to. I wonder, how they got the team together. All of that, all of those questions. For me at the moment, I'm not watching anything and basically I haven't watched anything for a while. But my ultimate entertainment is things that I can read in 8-minute increments in the middle of the night, because
Mm,
my baby is in the newborn stage. They're waking up every hour and a half to, if I'm lucky, every 3 hours, night
yeah.
to night. So it has to be something that I can read on my phone for 8 minutes. It has to be interesting enough that I want to dip into it, but not
Hmm.
engaging enough that I keep reading. If I keep reading, I'm fucking myself for the next day, right? So
Yeah.
for my first baby, it was the Jack Reacher novels. Perfect.
Uh-huh.
Perfect. Formulaic enough that you kind of remember where you were at. You know, but also you're like, he'll be okay. So you can put the phone down. You're not like, oh, I wonder what'll happen. You're like, he'll punch someone and it'll be fine. you know. But yeah, that kind of thing, again, I don't think people have a lot of respect for the Jack Reacher novels. They were perfect. They were exactly what I needed for that period of my life. And this time round, it's been the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, which are sort of
Mm.
a wizard detective and his adventures.
They do the job, right?
Yeah,
They do the job of what you needed to do. I mean, I've even started, to be honest with you, I haven't watched television like in like 2 weeks. Just partially because I've been traveling and haven't had time. But I'm also I found myself like kind of like in a YouTube rabbit hole. Like you watch one video that's like 5 minutes and then you're like, oh, and this looks good and this looks good. I think I told you I started drumming. And one night I was like um trying to I wanted to play the fill to In the Air Tonight. Phil I
Of
went down
course you
a
did.
whole rabbit hole of like video after video after video of like people breaking down that song. And you cut to 2 hours later, it's like, well, that was my movie for tonight. I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos about Phil Collins and Genesis. So, it's like, I don't know. It's just an interesting place.
I'll tell you what I can't do content wise. I cannot do short form content.
Mm,
The reels or I'm not on TikTok, but TikTok, that kind of thing that all of the social media platforms are trying to push us towards now.
yeah.
I can't do it. I mean, I can do it, obviously. I get sucked into it occasionally, but after about 3 or 4 minutes of it, maybe 10 minutes, I start to feel like I'm disconnecting from reality
Yeah.
because, for example, the way I'll put together a stand-up show is I'll tell a joke and then a seemingly unrelated joke and then a bunch of other things sort of together, and then I twist it around at the end, you realize they were all connected.
Mm,
And obviously we all, as humans, we have narrative brains. We try to find a story in everything. But I've been training that part of my brain my entire career. So if someone tells a joke and then another joke, I think, well, how are they connected? What are they leading to? Likewise, if I see a 1 minute video about someone unplugging a drain and then someone doing a prank and then someone eating an enormous number of sweets and then somebody doing something cute with their baby, some part of my brain is going, where are we going with this? and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
we aren't going anywhere with this, and I start to feel like I've lost it. Like
Yeah.
like I don't, I can't, it really upsets me. I feel really like disassociated or something. It feels like the world is disconnecting because there is no narrative thread. Obviously what's connecting them is an algorithm working on some associative mechanism that that I can't get my head around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really fucks me up. I don't know if other people feel that way. Do you feel that way?
It's so interesting. I don't think I necessarily look for, the connections, but I will say I have a TikTok account, but I'm never on there. And I just don't want to go down that road. I don't want to go down the road of TikTok, but I can spend a long time on Instagram. And it's a similar, concept in terms of like it just keeps going. But I don't think I ever look for, connections, but it is a conscious thing that after so long, it's like a conscious thing where you're just like, what are you doing? Like, what does this have to do with anything? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because also I think it's like to your point, it's like with the algorithm or whatever, it's like it just keeps going and going. It's never ending. And it's like I do get to a point where it's like, yeah, what is this? Like literally in a very like meta kind of way. Like, what is this? Like,
Where are
what are
we
we doing?
going? Yeah.
Yeah, where are we going? Where are we going with this? It just keeps like adding on. It's almost like it just keeps adding on to the story and adding on and adding on. And then after a while, it's just like, I've lost the plot.
It's like it's like it's like a toddler telling a story, and then
And
you're
then
like, "Where's
and
the
then
arc?" This is a terrible thing. I one of the lines in my most recent show, and weirdly, the most kind of audience danger in the show. It's not a swear word, not like some controversial topic. It was me going, I can't do the millennial mum comedy about being a parent. They're like, what am I doing? Kind of, you see that around the place. I can't do that because I'm an incredible mother. And just seeing an audience react to that
Interesting.
Just like they're not sure if they're allowed to accept that I'm a really good mother. But I'm coming up against the limits of my good mothering because I'm a very good mother, turns out, to an infant and to a baby, and like I've just milk and love and patience and all of that. Where I hit my limit again with that, like having trained my narrative brain, is a really long, boring story. I'm like, okay, and then what happened? But why? And like, can we resolve this somehow? I feel like I'm like stage parenting my child through being able to tell an engaging story. I'm like, no. Wait. When did the dinosaur arrive? What's his name? Like, how is he connected to the other characters?
I mean, if that's what you're doing, you are a good mother, though, because that's a very important skill to have.
Yeah,
Hey.
but like maybe I'm hothousing my kid. Maybe you need to go through the stage where you tell a story that has no point. But yeah, so I have to get through this stage, I think, or have more confidence that this is a good way to parent.
I think it's a good skill to have, to know how to tell a story, even just like orally, you know? Like it's so funny. Like last night I was out with some friends, and one of my friends was telling a story, and the other women were like, "Get to the point." So what happened? And they're just like, what ended up happening at the end? And it's like, no, I gotta tell you this other piece. I gotta tell you this other piece of it. And like why such and such did such, and they're like, I just want to know what happened. Like just tell me what happened in the end.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know.
I like to make fun of my friends who are into sports. If they ever insist on watching sport when I'm around, I'm like, is he the baddie? Like. But actually, weirdly, if you do ask questions like that, you get quite an interesting. You realize that sport, the whole thing of following sports is, yeah, these are the baddies and these are the goodies and these are their stories, and it's actually just gossip about people. It's not like.
Yeah, that's very true.
So I'm going to start to wrap this up because I don't want to take too much of your time. Can you tell people where they can find you, where they can support your work, if there's anything in particular that you'd like them to turn their attention to right now?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on all platforms. My handle is As You Speak. It's AZUSPEAK. So going back to our conversation about my name, that is actually a combination of Avril Zalima Speaks, but just without the S at the end. So it's As You Speak. Get it? Get it?
I get it. I think that's lovely.
That's my handle for everything, for Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the things. And I will say, you know, this conversation that we've had about consumerism and art and commerce, people can check out some more of that, especially particularly people who are interested in film and filmmaking. I do have a podcast called Distribution Advocates Presents, where we're talking about some of this stuff.
I'm sure people will check that out. Distribution Advocates Presents. Please look up Avril and As You Speak on all of the social media. Thank you so much for having tea with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, do you know her or do you not? This dolphin mistress we have got. Elsie Thompson, it is her name, and she helps the dolphins at every frame. Loudy rifle doll, loudy rifle day.